Welcome to another episode of Mobility Matters podcast by Keep Middlesex Moving. I'm Arlene Holt, and I am joined by my co-host, Chris Ganda. Hi, Chris.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us again.
And today we are joined by Jasmine Lawrence of the NJTPA. Hi, Jasmine.
Hi, Arlene. Hi, Chris. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. So we wanted to get you on our podcast episode today to talk a little bit about complete streets. That seems to be but it is a hot topic around New Jersey and the country. And we've hosted numerous other podcasts about it, but this one takes a more nuanced approach from the NJTPA and some of the programs that you offer to support complete streets in northern New Jersey. So with that said, we have a lot to talk about today. So why don't we just jump in, and you can start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your role at NJTPA.
Yeah, of course. Thank you again so much for having me. I'll start with saying I am a Middlesex County resident, born and raised. So KMM is my TMA, which is great and amazing. And I went to school in Middlesex County, went to Rutgers, Middlesex County, and now I'm a principal planner in TMA Mobility Programs here at the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority. I'm also a part-time lecturer at Rutgers, and I teach the intro and advanced graphical communication classes. A little bit more about me. I love to read. I know that you're interested in knowing if I was a dog or cat person. I don't think this is fair. I'm allergic to cats, so they never really had a chance. So by default, I'm a dog person. And here at the NJTPA, I am the TMA program manager. As you both know, I love working with both of you and now Brian. I also manage the Complete Streets, a demonstration library, as we know, and we're going to talk about more today. I'm excited about that. And then other mobility programs here as well.
Sounds like you've got your hands full, especially with many organizations like ours in the state. I know you'll say that ours is the best. I'm sorry. But we have a lot of awesome things going on, as do the other TMAs, and we all have our niche programs where we kind of lean into. Yeah, Complete Streets is something that's, ingrained in all of what we do across all the TMAs. So can you tell us about some of the projects that are funded through NJTPA that you'd like to highlight, maybe coming up in this winter or early spring season?
Yeah, so the NJTPA funds a number of projects ranging from road safety improvements, and we have a couple of those going on right now, air quality monitoring, to planning studies that may include projects like placemaking, traffic calming toolkits, and other Complete Streets related projects. We have 2 Complete Streets technical assistance projects going on right now in Belleville and Verona. And they recently had 2 demonstration projects where they used our demonstration project library to help them put in some protected bike lanes and narrow the streets a little bit and add some back and forth parallel parking on each side of the road and things like that. So there's a lot of things going on here that are exciting and help make our streets safer.
Just to go back a little bit, can you talk about what is the NJTPA? Because for some of our listeners, they may not be aware of what the NJTPA is and what is an MPO. And I think that will help them understand better what you do.
Yeah, of course. So for a quick overview, the NJTPA is the federally authorized metropolitan planning organization that oversees 13 counties in northern and central New Jersey. And we oversee more than $3 billion each year in cooperation with NJDOT, NJ Transit, and other partners. And as a regional planning organization, we address transportation networks that span and connect many communities across wide areas. And the federal government created MPOs, which are metropolitan planning organizations, to conduct regional transportation planning and oversee transportation investments in urbanized regions defined by the U.S. Census Bureau. And this process helps ensure that transportation funds are effectively improving mobility, accessibility, climate, safety, and promote economic activity.
You definitely have your hands full in the planning and implementation safety projects that go on. So the NJTPA is called North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority, which means that you oversee the counties from Middlesex County up to northern New Jersey, correct?
Yes, and then also Ocean and Monmouth. So we have a little bit going down the shore as well. And then there's also the South Jersey Transportation Planning Organization. That's like the most southern part of New Jersey. And then DVRPC is that western south part that also blends into Pennsylvania. So we're a state covered by 3 MPOs, which makes us a little bit unique in that sense. And also unique in the fact that we have 8 TMAs that cover our entire state as well.
So, with all the federal funding that you receive for your initiatives and what's happening on the ground with what a lot of the work like organizations like the TMAs and KMM do, can you kind of give me a little bit of background on how that's data driven and what you're looking for in regard to improving safety and how Complete Streets works into that?
Yeah, definitely. So just to define complete streets a little bit more too, complete streets are designed to ensure safe and adequate accommodation of all users of the transportation system, including pedestrians, bicyclists, public transportation users, children, older adults, individuals with disabilities, motorists, and freight vehicles. So any person who uses the road, that's what Complete Streets is about, and making complete streets to make our roads safer for everyone. And data is a big part of that here at NJTPA and in general, and understanding where our roads need improvement. That's a big piece of it. So using that data to actually identify intersections or corridors that might need infrastructure changes, and complete streets can be useful in solving those problems, right? So complete streets is kind of that link to the data is helping identify where a problem is. Complete streets is helping solving that problem. So it's bridging that gap. And that's what a lot of our programs here at NJTPA try to do.
And it's easy to imagine a complete street in, say, an urban area where you already have people who are walking and biking, and there may be bike lanes or other facilities to encourage bicycling as a mode of transportation. Would they also work in, say, more rural areas in the state?
Yeah, of course. So a big part of complete streets is that this approach, the planning, designing, and building streets, is that it's very context sensitive, meaning that each street should be designed based on specific community needs. So this can result in no two streets within the same community having the same design because needs of road users may change in different parts of town. And complete streets addresses a number of elements that make up the built environment, whether you're in an urban area, suburban area, or a rural community. So things like that include sidewalks, bike lanes, bus lanes, public transportation stops, crosswalks, crossing opportunities, median islands, accessible pedestrian signals, curb extensions, streetscape elements, and landscape treatments. And not all of these things are a perfect fit for each community. It depends on where you are and maybe what the problems are for that roadway or which road users are using that road the most, or maybe even what road users are missing from the conversation or using that road that should be using it. No matter where you are, complete streets can help you determine that vision and what you want your street to look like and what it should look like based off of those community needs.
Right. So the needs of, let's say, here in Middlesex County of New Brunswick are far different than Old Bridge or Sayreville. All of those issues are taken into account when you're designing a street that is in line with the complete streets policy.
Right, exactly. And since the entire complete streets approach revolves around making streets a safe place and safe space for all road users, it's naturally balancing the needs of pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers at all times, right? But again, like I said, it is context sensitive. So if you have a street that the community has decided would be better as a pedestrian street and not open to cars, that design choice is still meeting that balance without conflict since it's the best decision for the community based on what the community needs and wants.
And how do those design treatments affect how drivers use the road? And a lot of times we'll work with a community and they'll say that speeding is an issue. And we hear this in every community we work with. But how do complete streets address that concern for the way people use our roads and streets?
A lot of complete streets treatments result in a lot of traffic calming. So if speeding is an issue and people are also supposed to be sharing that road, walking and biking, trying to make those travel lanes narrower is always an option. And larger improvements like bringing out the sidewalk curb extensions or even putting up protected bike lanes, right? So taking some space away from cars, not removing it entirely, but giving people who are using other modes of transportation a safe chance at using that road as well. So a lot of the treatments in complete streets result in safer roads just by design.
Right, because you're designing a road for the speed limit, not for higher speed, for moving traffic more efficiently. So a road may have a speed limit of 25 miles an hour, but the driver may feel comfortable driving at 45 miles an hour just because of the design.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And complete streets isn't about getting someone from point A to point B as fast as possible. It's about getting people where they want to go as safely as possible and in what mode that makes the most sense for that specific roadway in whichever town it may be in.
And I think some of this kind of alludes to, that historical context of how streets were formerly designed. Can you tell us more about that and why complete streets is so important as a tool essentially to help communities move forward?
Yeah, if you're thinking back to the public right of way and how that came about, and that people have the right to move and get from place to place as like a basic law of living on this planet, it goes
Oh
back
yeah.
to that. And the most original street design and how we were getting about was walking, and then it was horse and carriage, and the roads were much narrower. People were moving at a much slower pace. And then as we kept developing, streets and cars and everything just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So we're kind of going back to designs and approaches that we've been using for decades. But we had a little slip up in the middle, and we're trying to get back to that slower driving speed, safer designs, and more people and bike oriented road designs as well.
Yeah, and a lot of things that we've seen with the complete streets implementation is also facilitating social interaction between folks as well. In our cars, we're all in these bubbles and just forcing our way through to get from point A to point B. But sometimes the interactions aren't so great with road rage and speeding, and how folks perceive the behaviors of other drivers. So I absolutely see that the benefit of, I don't want to say slowing things down, because that's not everything, right? But to create moments where people experience other people, I think alone can have a traffic calming effect in a way too.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so we have quite a few tools under our belt in terms of supporting complete streets. And you had mentioned to a couple of projects that you have going on with a few of the communities in Belleville and Verona and their complete streets treatments. And then you had also mentioned something about placemaking. So along that conversation about social interaction, what was it about placemaking as a complete streets treatment makes it so interesting to you?
So going back to kind of what you just said before, Chris, I think that was a really important point. And I think complete streets also helps us see not streets as a means just to get from point A to B, but as a place and a space that's open for people to use and interact with each other with. So that's a really big part of complete streets. And I think we saw how much we were missing and how much we were missing out on with that when COVID came around, right? With how many streets were closed, all the outdoor dining, and these ways that we are creating public spaces within our streets, because it is a public space. Everyone has the right to access it and use it. So complete streets helps us actually do that. And when it comes to place making, we recently did a project actually in Prospect Park. It was Prospect Park pop-up parklet. So this project was part of the outreach portion of the community vision plan for Prospect Park with VTC and NJTPA. And Prospect Park set up a parklet in the study to demonstrate potential improvements and gather feedback from residents and visitors. So we here at the NJTPA proposed a couple of different design options to the town using SketchUp. And then the final design consisted of delineating the width of the parking space with freestanding weighted delineators and the length of the parking spaces with plastic jersey barriers to make sure people were totally safe from moving traffic. And then this created a sense of enclosure for visitors and simultaneously, again, acted as that safety component. So those placemaking efforts and activities were included to enhance the user experience and ensure people didn't feel as if they were on the road. And then we also used artificial turf mats to cover the two parking spaces completely, and that actually bled into the sidewalk. So it felt like an extension of the sidewalk and public space rather than feeling like you were sitting in the middle of the roadway. And it was way more inviting, it expanded the public realm. A lot of local businesses were involved, and so many people stopped to talk about the project with us on the street. Lots of kids played games, they colored, they interacted with each other in a space that wouldn't have been available to them before these improvements were put in. So Complete Streets helped make that happen.
Awesome. And what was some of the feedback that you were getting from the business owners and the residents?
They enjoyed the day a lot. And for that community where we were, there wasn't much like outdoor dining particularly happening or like a place for children to just be themselves and play. So the kids loved it. And their caretakers, whether it was their grandparents, their aunt, their mom or dad that was with them that day, they enjoyed it because they had a chance to sit on one of the benches we had and just let the kids enjoy themselves. So that was really great. I will say some of the adults that were walking by enjoyed it for that, but then we're like, yeah, but we need more parking. So it allowed us to like have the chance to educate as well and get feedback live right there. So that's another important part of demonstration projects, because the educational component is also ingrained into that. So then we're also teaching the public about complete streets, but then they're teaching us as well and telling us about their community and their needs in real time before permanent changes are made.
And that's so important, getting the outreach from the community, the feedback, because a lot of times when you talk about like complete streets and bike lanes, all of a sudden, people get upset because, like you said, they might be losing out on a parking spot near their favorite convenience store or something like that. And so part of it is just educating the public and helping them understand how making small changes to your roadways and your community can increase safety and make it accessible for all people to get around their communities. I think, it's important for us to always remember that not everybody has the ability to walk very far, but just creating those accessible places for people to get around and move more efficiently is so important.
Exactly. And even just increasing their quality of life. Those children were so happy that day and got to interact and see some of their friends or make new friends. And it was just an awesome experience to be a part of.
It's kind of like that saying where people sit nowadays, they say kids don't play in the streets anymore.
Yeah. It reminded me of like playing kickball on the street with my friends. And it's like, oh, this is their kickball right now, the moment happening for them. It's playing large tic-tac-toe and giant Jenga in this little parklet on the turf with their grandparents sitting on the bench watching them. It was really sweet.
Wow, so it did come with some type of programming or facilities that kids can actually engage with.
Yeah, we had a picnic table out and some drawing activities, asking them maybe what would they like to see on the street. So then they drew what they would want to see there instead. And then there was also like large Connect Four and kind of like a mini cornhole type of game. And there was also giant Jenga, and we actually had, I think it was about like a 6 by 6 foot wood floor that we put in. We have panels like that within our demonstration library. So when the Jenga fell, you actually heard it. So it added like a sound piece to the parklet as well, and a bench. So all of that fit just within 2 parallel parking spaces. Imagine what would fit on a whole entire strip of a street, removing maybe a whole strip of that parking. There's just so much space that is left to cars, which is needed sometimes. But when you see how much the community is interacting with this space and how much they're enjoying it, it's like, here's the obvious answer, right? Like, look at these kids smiling and laughing and playing in a place that they normally wouldn't have access to.
That's awesome.
Exactly. We continue to talk a little bit about the demonstration program. Why don't you tell us exactly what is the Complete Streets Demonstration Library at NJTPA and why NJTPA felt the need to create this library?
Yeah, thank you. Definitely need to back up and explain that a bit. Many communities across the country have been implementing these flexible temporary street designs that help implement complete streets. These demonstration projects, and sometimes called tactical urbanism or pop-ups, allow communities to try out bicycle lanes, corner bump outs, pedestrian plazas, or parklets, like I just mentioned, in place of on-street parking, and other safety, placemaking, and traffic calming features before installing improvements permanently. And since these temporary interventions take place within the street, they do require demarcation with paint, signage, some movable bollards, which are vertical short posts used to divert traffic, movable curbs, and other traffic control devices. And they may also include the use of street furniture, like I mentioned, benches, planters, or games even. And we wanted to create a program that supports and encourages communities to test out temporary changes to their roadways while also engaging with and collecting feedback from the community. So a demonstration project is the perfect program to do that, because you're working with the community to implement this change, but it is temporary. So you can see what they did and didn't like, and then work towards, okay, what is the permanent solution in the future?
It sounds like it costs a lot of money.
Well, actually, with the NJTPA, if you want to create a complete streets demonstration project, our library is free to use and open to municipalities, counties, and TMAs. So it comes at no charge to you at all using our program here.
Yeah, and sometimes those temporary demonstration projects, just you install them for the time, and then it just, for whatever reason, it may not work, or you may find that it will work in a different location. So without the municipality or the county spending a ton of money on something that it's just not going to work for the community or for traffic calming, this gives you the opportunity to test drive what you have in your head, or what the community feels that they may need. And then once it's been tested out, they realize, well, that didn't work exactly the way we wanted it to. So, maybe we have to revisit this again. And I think that's important for everybody to understand, that a demonstration project is just temporary, and that can be molded and changed to fit your ideas and your ultimate goal.
Yeah, exactly. And some of these projects, we've had them last 1 day, 3 hours, 1 month, 2 months. So it's totally up to you and your community how long you want it to last in order to collect maybe some before and after feedback. But when you're working on setting up the demonstration projects, we at NJTPA can help you with that design, or you can work with your TMA, your planners and engineers, and then use our materials for that time being and then return them afterwards. So you're also not keeping the materials or having that burden of storing them somewhere. You're only borrowing them for that one project and then handing it back over.
So the success of these programs, and we're also saying this is almost like a test drive.
Mhm.
So can you give us any instances where communities have gone all in after implementing these temporary demonstration projects?
I'm so happy you asked me that. So, at least in the terms of the projects that have been completed using the demonstration library, we've had 20 projects completed since fiscal year 2022 for us. And Jersey City has been and continues to be great when it comes to tactical urbanism projects. But they've recently been using our demonstration library to help bring more of these demonstration projects onto the streets and make them safer for their community members. So there was a project in Jersey City for school PS5, Division of Transportation Planning of the city's Department of Infrastructure installed a temporary safety demonstration project at the intersection of school to evaluate potential enhancements to school safety at PS5. The intersection historically provided unclear direction for street users to navigate, making the intersection confusing and making road users feel unsafe. So Jersey City worked with the students actually to develop those plans and come up with some designs to install a pedestrian safety island and curb extensions at the intersection, which is great. So the kids were invested, the school was invested, and it ends up becoming a really great project. And then in the end, after the community had positive feedback on the project, Jersey City permanently installed that pedestrian safety island. So that was a project that went from something temporary that was on the street, I think about 1 to 2 weeks, maybe a month max. And then afterwards, they talked to the community, sent out some surveys, got some data, and then installed that permanently. So now that intersection is safer, kids are walking to school safer, buses are getting in and out of there safer. So it's a win-win for everyone.
Now I'm curious. That's super awesome, by the way, especially to support kids and folks of all ages within that neighborhood. But my question is, for communities to implement even a demonstration project, have you had any challenges related to local policies and having to be amended or adjusted to accommodate any of these projects?
So far, no. Whenever we complete a demonstration project with municipalities or TMAs, counties using our demonstration project library, we make sure that the engineer and planners are on board. So we make sure everything is MUTCD compliant and that we have the engineer let me know that they're okay with the design, they approve of it, and we're good to go. So we haven't run into a situation where something we're doing is a surprise or also doesn't align with what the town's street design rules are, right? So we are following the MUTCD and everything we're doing is in line with what that community sees as their vision.
So when we're talking about implementing a complete streets demonstration project, or even a traffic calming, how important is it for community engagement in this aspect of planning and designing for complete streets?
I'd say community engagement is one of the most important aspects of demonstration projects and complete streets because both are based on a community's context. So without input from the community, your street's not going to be complete. And what makes the demonstration project a success is the educational aspect, right? Teaching and learning from each other, the planners, engineers, local officials, and the community. And to get that real-time feedback, like I mentioned, we did with Prospect Park before projects are made permanent. So with demonstration projects, you're out on the street engaging with the community members and even having volunteers help install the design. So it's not always just the town installing it. Like with PS5, the kids helped, the students helped install that one. And some other demonstration projects we've had done in Passaic with Easy Ride, they've had over hundreds of volunteers from the town come and help actually install and paint and place bollards around to get that installation done. So this more hands-on experience lets the community know their opinion matters and that they also were part of making their community safer.
Yeah, that's really key in just getting the community buy-in and making them feel that they were part of the decision making, that it wasn't just done as an afterthought, because that's really been historically what's happened, right? Is that we kind of just, our elected officials decide, let's put this highway in through a neighborhood without realizing the consequences and repercussions of those communities. So part of Complete Streets is trying to rectify those, as we mentioned previously, rectify those past sins that we've committed to in our cities, in our own communities.
Right. And I'd say this community engagement too is way more organic than the typical community engagement that we're used to when it comes to the planning world. So this ends up resulting in a better design and everyone ends up either being on board, but even if you get bad feedback, it's still good feedback because you're testing something out and you're learning what your community likes and doesn't like, or what they want and what they need. So not all negative feedback really is negative. It's good to it just helps you understand that community or that person's needs more, and that's not bad.
Right. And it shows that if you're getting a lot of negative feedback, then there's work that you have to do in order to help educate the public and to create a win-win situation for everyone. Because somebody may be upset that they're losing a parking spot, but why do they feel that way? I think it's really important to figure out why they're feeling that way and how we can work together to make sure that this works for everybody. So the community feedback is so integral to any of this kind of work that communities are doing with. And yeah, I mean, sometimes you get really loud, a minority of people who might have a opinion on it, but maybe the greater community might feel differently. So, but it's important to understand where everybody is coming from.
Yeah, exactly. And when I see that, I see it more as this person's very passionate about something, and we have to understand why they're so passionate about that.
Yeah.
And if we have maybe a solution to fixing that problem or having them better understand what we're trying to do and then listen to them, sometimes we really just need to be better listeners so then we can come up with solutions that make sense the first time.
It would make sense for the municipal government to reach out to you with a concept in mind already. Has it ever happened where community members have come to you with a concept and wanted to bring that to the attention to their local leaders?
So most of the time, you're right. The communities do come to us with the design in mind, and then we talk to them about it or might suggest things that we think work better, or talk to their engineer to make sure that they're okay with it and everything works out the way they want it to. For Prospect Park, like I mentioned before, that community needed help with designing the parklet. So we here at NJTPA helped assist creating that design. I worked on creating 3 different options in SketchUp so they could see it visually without just explaining it, because when you show things graphically, it's much easier for people to understand and see exactly what it would look like. So I worked on creating that in a 3D model so they understood exactly how much space it would take up and what elements would be part of that design. There has been other demonstration projects that have been done by Easy Ride, and they have worked with the community, and they've worked to help propose a design. Specifically, I'm thinking of in Red Bank, New Jersey, they have an annual Porch Fest. So the past 2 years now, we've worked with Easy Ride and Red Bank to install temporary bike lanes, and Easy Ride helped Red Bank come up with the designs for that. So it just depends on who they reach out to first, really. If they end up reaching out to us first, I'm always happy and welcome to assisting the communities create those designs. But then sometimes the communities reach out to you guys, the TMAs first, and you assist as well. So it really just depends on their thought process. But either way works, but I'm always open to that. And some communities have reached out to brainstorm and stuff before they put in an application. And the application process is very simple. We get back to people within 1 to 2 weeks. It's not something that takes months or a year. You submit your application, we review it, talk to you about it, and then we get ready to lend you those materials.
So we're running out of time right now, but this has been great information that you're providing. What advice would you have to municipalities and communities who are trying to bring a complete streets plan to their towns?
I would make sure that your planning, engineering, and police departments, even as well as your council members and commissioners, know what complete streets is. Education on the professional side is just as important as it is for community members, and complete streets training happens year round. So I definitely encourage anyone and everyone to go to those when they come around, because all departments need to align with this approach for it to fully work. You also need to make sure you codify it. So pass the complete and green streets resolution and work to implement it. Don't just pass it. Make sure that when you are receiving land development applications or you're working on street improvements, that you are adhering to that resolution. Also, make sure to ask questions, reach out to your local Transportation Management Association, your MPOs, whether it's us, NJTPA, South Jersey Transportation Planning Organization, SJTPO, or Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, DVRPC, and also research centers like Rutgers Voorhees Transportation Center if you want to talk through things, you want examples of model complete streets policies and more. And then also demonstration projects, test out your ideas. You don't have to do anything permanently. No one's telling you to. And demonstration projects are the perfect way to see maybe how your organization reacts to it, how the community reacts to it, and how to move forward, or how to get everyone on the same page.
All right, as we wrap up, Jasmine, do you have any quick tips or resources or even events coming up that you'd like to share with our listeners to learn more about Complete Streets or the demonstration library?
Yeah, definitely. So on January 28th at 11:30, you can join the NJTPA for a conversation about creating active and accessible communities in northern New Jersey. And this is going to be an interactive forum where you'll have the opportunity to share your thoughts and ideas about our next long-range transportation plan. So that's an event that's coming up for us. In terms of Complete Streets, there's always webinars going on. I think there's one coming up soon, even with South Jersey Transportation Planning Organization and VTC. So head over to their websites to find out more about that. And I would just say, remember that complete streets are for all road users, not just cars. And more information about our Complete Streets demonstration library can be found at njtpa.org/demo library. And then for other municipal programs like Complete Streets Technical Assistance, Vibrant Communities Initiative, and Planning for Emergent Centers, you can check out our municipal programs page at njtpa.org/municipalities.
And don't worry, to everyone, we will have all the links and all the resources posted to this episode so that you can refer to them and access all the information that we have shared on this episode.
Jasmine, thank you so much for spending the time with us. And I had a great time listening to you, and I learned a lot. I mean, that happens every episode, but this is really valuable to me. Thanks, Jasmine.
Thank you both.
Thank you to you and to everybody at NJTPA for everything that you're doing to improve safety in Middlesex County and in the state of New Jersey.
Thank you both. It's always a pleasure to talk to you guys and hang out. I will talk to you both about Complete Streets anytime you want. And KMM is amazing. They continue to do great work. So thank you guys for being in the boots on the ground, doing all of this work and making sure that we're creating places, spaces, and streets that benefit everyone.
Thank you so much. And that's it. Catch us at the next episode of Mobility Matters podcast. You can find us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and on Buzzsprout, as well as kmm.org. Take care.
This ad is disseminated under the sponsorship of NJTPA and FHWA in the interest of information exchange.